Hello, my name's Francis. I'm your teacher for today. We're going to be looking at one of the IGCSE set texts, The Fall of the House of Usher by Edgar Allan Poe. But before we look at that, I want you to have a quick think about some of the words that are to do with houses. So what I'd like you to do in a minute is to pause the video, look at these words and make some notes on what you think they mean. When we come back, I will explain them. Okay, let's have a look and see which ones we can explain. If we go from the top of the house, there might be a pitched roof. Pitched roof means the roof is like that, rather than a flat roof, which is like that. Pitched roof, the water can flow down it. A lot of houses over in England have pitched roofs. Under the pitched roof, in this area in here, you'll have the attic. The attic, some people have a stairway up to it. Most people have a ladder or something going up, temporary ladder, and we use it for storage, etc. Coming down a bit, we might have the bedrooms. And in the bedrooms, we could have, often in children's bedrooms, bunk beds. Rather than have two beds next to each other, bunk beds are where we have a bed above another bed. Often find them at English boarding schools. Come down a bit further and you get to the sitting room. Sitting room, there's a number of words we use for this room with the television and the sofa and possibly armchairs. Sitting room could be the lounge, could be the drawing room. Certainly in very big houses like mansions, you would have the drawing room. It's short for the withdrawing room. And a mansion is a big house, lots of bedrooms, beautifully done up. And the opposite of a mansion that is beautifully done up would be a derelict mansion. Derelict, maybe the roof is falling in, maybe it's got some broken windows, maybe the wallpaper is falling off the walls and it's dirty. Derelict, no one's living there, it's in dreadful condition. The derelict house could be in the countryside, it could be in a rural location, or it could be in a town. The word we use for town, the opposite of rural, is urban. But a rural location is in the countryside. When you come into the house, you might come in, the first room you come into might be the hall. A lot of houses have a hall. Hall in my house, where I'm sitting now, is quite narrow. But in a big mansion, it would be a huge room, possibly with a table there and place for putting the post. And off the hall, you might have the kitchen, and off the kitchen, you might have the larder. The larder is where you keep the food. Little room off and off the kitchen. And as we go to the bottom, well, we go even further than the bottom, under the house, we'd get to the cellar. So what I'd like you to do now is pause the video so you can write a description of a house using some of those words that I've just presented. Okay, superb. Let's get on to the actual House of Usher. The House of Usher, we'd usually take this to mean the actual house. And there we have a house with pitched roof. We have turrets along here, decorative turrets. We've got some windows missing and greenery growing all over it. It looks like pretty much of a derelict house. It's certainly in a rural location. And the House of Usher is often taken to mean the building. But the House of Usher could mean something else. It could mean the family. This is a family tree going from grandmother, grandfather, mother and father, brother and you. So your family tree could be said to be your house. My name is Francis Charters, so I come from the House of Charters. Okay, The Fall of the House of Usher was a short story, is a short story. It was written in 1839, And it was first published in a magazine, not in a book. And it was written by a guy called Edgar Allan Poe. There you've got a black and white picture of him. They didn't have much color photography around in those days. Edgar Allan Poe was an American, so some of this is American English rather than British English. And it's quite old English. He was born in 1809. Quick bit of mathematics for you. How old was he when he wrote this story? That's right, he was 30 years old. He was the child of two actors, David and Eliza Poe, and he was orphaned. What does orphaned mean? That's right, both his parents died. So he was orphaned and he was brought up by John and Frances Allen. John and Frances Allen were two people who brought him up, and we can see that he took part of their surname, part of his birth parents' surname. He became Allan Poe, Edgar Allan Poe. And he was known for writing macabre short stories. Macabre means, bloody, violent, horrible, ghostly. All of those words would come into macabre. Very dark. So, a few new words in there. What I'd like you to do, even though some of these words are old-fashioned, you need to write them down as we go along. I will explain some of them, but whatever, look them up later if you're still unsure of their meaning. So make sure while you go through this lesson, you've got pen and paper beside you, or a pen and an exercise book, and you write down the new words, and we'll explain the meanings as we go along. So, on to the story. During the whole of a dull, dark, and soundless day in the autumn of the year, when the clouds hung oppressively low in the heavens, I had been passing alone on horseback through a singularly dreary tract of country, and at length found myself, as the shades of the evening drew on, within view of the melancholy house of Usher. I know not how it was, but with the first glimpse of the building, a sense of insufferable gloom pervaded my spirit. I say insufferable, for the feeling was unrelieved by any of that half pleasurable, because poetic sentiment with which the mind usually receives even the sternest of natural images of the desolate or terrible. I looked upon the scene before me, upon the mere house and the simple landscape features of the domain, upon the bleak walls, upon the vacant eye-like windows, upon a few rank sedges, and upon a few white trunks of decayed trees, with an utter depression of soul, which I can compare to no earthly sensation more properly than to the after dream of a reveller upon opium, the bitter lapse into everyday life, the hideous dropping of the veil. Ooh, quite a lot in there. If we have a look through it, look at some of the meaning. So what's happening? The day was dull, dark, and soundless. Dull, dark, bit of alliteration there. Soundless. It was a pretty depressing day in the autumn of the year. The autumn is a time of dying, time of leaves falling, time of light going. He's setting up the story immediately with his description of the environment. He says he was passing alone on horseback, natural form of transport. And he says he got to the house of Usher. Already we're in a mode of depression, even though we've only just got there. We look further down, we're told that the house has vacant eye-like windows. Key word here is personification. Personification is when we put human-like features onto animals or inanimate objects like a house. We're saying the house has eye-like windows. The eyes, it was once said, are windows upon the soul. You look into someone's eyes and you know what they're thinking. The vacant eye-like windows suggests there's not much going on in there. Something is wrong. He says he can compare the feeling the house gave him to no earthly sensation other than the after dream of a reveller upon opium. Opium is the drug of choice of many Victorians. And when you come out of it, you get some really nasty after effects. Dropping of the veil, this could be a reference to a biblical reference to dropping of the veil and seeing the hideousness in its entirety rather than in a reflection. Reflection of veil, half seeing are key themes to this story. So let's try another bit of the story. There was an iciness, a sinking, a sickening of heart, an unredeemed dreariness of thought, which no goading of the imagination could torture into aught of the sublime. What was it, I paused to think? What was it that so unnerved me in the contemplation of the house of Usher? It was a mystery all insoluble. Nor could I grapple with the shadowy fancies that crowded upon me as I pondered. I was forced to fall back upon the unsatisfactory conclusion that while, without doubt, there are combinations of very simple natural objects which have the power of thus affecting us, still the analysis of this power lies in the considerations beyond our depth. It was possible, I reflected, that a mere different arrangement of the particulars of the scene, the details of the picture, would be sufficient to modify or perhaps to annihilate its capacity of sorrowful impression. And acting upon this idea, I reined my horse to the precipitous brink of a black and lurid tarn that lay in unruffled lustre by the dwelling, and gazed down, but with a shudder even more thrilling than before, upon the remodeled and inverted images of the grey sedge and the ghastly tree stems and the vacant eye-like windows. Let's have a look at some of the things that come out of there. So what's happening? He wants to annihilate its capacity for sorrow impression. He's saying reordering the house, redesigning it, redesigning the environment might kill off this sorrowful impression. Annihilate means kill off. He reins his horse in, he stops his horse at the precipitous bank. Precipitous means it falls off like a cliff down to the black and lurid tarn. The black and lurid tarn, a tarn is a small lake, a pond that's in front of the house. Lurid means it's evocative, it brings up emotions, negative emotions. Sedge is a kind of grass, is a kind of reed-like grass that grows at the side of ponds, in bogs. Right, let's move on then to that one. Okay. Nevertheless, in this mansion of gloom, I now propose to myself a sojourn of some weeks. Its proprietor, Roderick Usher, had been one of my boon companions in boyhood, but many years had elapsed since our last meeting. A letter, however, had recently reached me in a distant part of the country, a letter from him, which, in its wildly importunate nature, had admitted of no other than a personal reply. The MS gave evidence of nervous agitation. The writer spoke of an acute bodily illness, of a mental disorder which oppressed him, and of an earnest desire to see me at his best and indeed his only friend, with the view to attempting, by the cheerfulness of my society, some alleviation of his malady. It was the manner in which all this and much more was said, the apparent heart that went with his request, which allowed me no room for hesitation, and I accordingly obeyed forthwith what I still considered a very singular summons. Sojourn means a visit. So even though it was a mansion of gloom, I'm going to stay there for some weeks. We're introduced to Roderick Usher. Roderick Usher is the master of the house, the main man, who was my boon companions, one of my boon companions, one of my closest friends when I was a boy. But I haven't seen him for some years. But the letter encouraged me to come and visit. The letter with its importunate nature. Importunate means really pushing, really over the top requesting. So what's going on down here? Its suggestion is that if I come to visit him, I being the narrator, come to visit him, my cheerfulness of society might pick up his health, help to pick up his health, whether mental or physical. And he, the narrator says he thought it was very singular, very strange summons. Okay, Fall of the House of Usher. Few things for you to do. Make a list of the facts you know about the house. So read through the text that we've done already. Make a list of the facts that you know. Make a list of the things you can infer about the house. There are things that we're not told specifically, but it suggests that we can imagine about the house. If possible, you could have discussed it with me if I was your teacher today, other than online. And you can write a report of your walk in the American hills where you come across the house. So you can write a little story about you walking across the American hills and you come across this house and you can describe what it's like and how it makes you feel. I'm going to finish there. Been good seeing you. Hope to see you again sometime.